Hello everyone, today I'd like to talk to you about Bergamote Calabria, the latest thing I've purchased from Guerlain. And I have a reason why I never purchased this Aqua Allegoria Bergamote Calabria. It is because when I smelled it, I found it rather redundant with other things I might have owned from the house. However, a few weeks ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, I got the samples for the X-rays from my dear friend Sebastian Furtado, and well, I never smelled them, and I will hopefully film that video in this sitting as well, in this session of videos that I'm trying to film today. I know that they launched Bergamote Fantastico, and I think it's a shame that I didn't have anything from Guerlain dedicated to bergamot, which is this ingredient that they do claim it's part of that guerlinade, and it is part of so many fragrances, well, including Shalimar. But I never truly had something purely dedicated to bergamot from this house, and I don't think I really tried thinking if I had something that's mainly bergamot or truly dedicated to bergamot, and I couldn't think of anything, and this is why I think Bergamote Calabria is the only thing that they ever did besides Bergamote Fantastico that is dedicated to bergamot. Now, when I smelled it years ago, it seemed quite a redundant rather scent, because it's, you know, it's freshy, it's a citrus scent. So, having not smelled this in a few years, you could almost say this was a blind buy, sort of. Now, and it is, because I'm very surprised by the scent in a very good way. This is the second time I'm smelling it after the period, because I did smell it when I received it and I loved it so much. This fragrance is very well loved within the community, and for good reason, because it's, you know, it's an Aqua Allegoria. This means it's a fresh, rather simple scent. All the complexity there is to be found here is within the complexity of the ingredients, mostly natural ingredients, up to 95% that they claim to use. But what I mean by that is the complexity you might find in this fragrance is very tied to the complexity of, you know, the smell of bergamot. And, you know, in reality, which is, it's orangey, citrusy, orangey, lemony, sweetish, bitter. The beauty of this scent, I think, the beauty of bergamot is the floral, rather white citrus floral facets that it also has. And this is a beautiful thing to have in a fragrance. Now, in most orange-based Aqua Allegorias from Guerlain, and I'm thinking of Orange Solea and Nerolia Bianca. That's true. So the two other Aqua Allegoria scents that I have that are kind of based on an orange type of smell, there are these floral aspects that are very beautiful when you discover them, when you kind of center on them, and they work so well with this tiny dose of vanilla that's always present in Guerlain's scents. It kind of brings everything together. It's like smelling the flowers of an orchid. I don't think I've ever told you this, but I used to grow orchids as well. I still have some cultivars. And what's interesting about orchids, you know, vanilla is an orchid, right? The vanilla pod comes from an orchid. I never grew orchid vanilla, or the vanilla orchid, because it's quite difficult to grow in a house. You know, you kind of need special environment. You need a lot of heat, you need humidity, you need many certain things to successfully grow a vanilla orchid in your house. However, I do grow some other things. Maybe if you're interested, I can tell you about my orchids, and I could show you about a few of my orchids at some time. But what's interesting about orchids, and this is very tangentially tied to this, but let's power through this. There are some fragrances you will search the notes of, and you will see listed there the orchid flower. And probably you'll have some common butterfly moth orchid shown there in the picture. But that wouldn't be true, because orchid flowers are mimetic, and there aren't two orchid flowers that smell the same. So I always asked myself, when I saw the picture of an orchid there within the notes, what type of orchid would that be? Now, of course, with the exception of the vanilla pod, orchid isn't used in perfumery at all. But let me get back to the scent profile. Orchid flowers have this mimetic scent where they kind of, so you've got many smells that orchids try to emulate. You've got spring floral smells. You've got the hyacinth smell that's very common in orchids. You've got minty smells. You've got chocolatey smells. You've got citrus smells. There's so many. You've got rosy smells. You've got coconut smells. You've got green apple smells in orchids. And there is this orchid that I have that kind of blooms in the springtime. It's a Dendrobium nobile. And it kind of has this citrusy, spring floral type of scent that kind of reminds me of this Bergamote Calabria. And all orchid smells, because this is why I mentioned orchids, have this faint, very naturally smelling vanilla. And it is very interesting to me, because all orchid smells are first and foremost woody smells. So enough about orchids. Now this is, as I said, all the complexity there is to be discovered in Bergamote Calabria is attributed to natural bergamot. And this is very interesting. However, the Aqua Allegoria, how does this one smell? The bergamot is very prominent. This is first and foremost bergamot. At first glance, if I had to liken it to other fragrances from the house of Guerlain, I would liken it to, there's the Les Eaux de Cologne. I think you can find something quite close to Eau de Guerlain. There's something very close to La Cologne de Parfumeur as well. I think it's the closest one, La Cologne de Parfumeur, which is this orange blossomy, as I said, floral aspects, orange blossom, musky type of scent. There's a bit of Neroli Outre Noir in this, and there's a bit of all the other Aqua Allegorias that are centered on citrus, including Nerolia vetiver, which is very nice. So this is why I always thought of Bergamote Calabria as being a bit redundant, while still loving the fragrance. Another interesting thing about Bergamote Calabria is this faint ambery thing that it has. It has this aura of an ambery fragrance that's very subdued. It's like smelling the first few seconds of Chalimard Cologne, right? It sort of announces the beginning of an ambery scent, of a typical Guerlain amber. And this is, because I did mention vanilla earlier, this I think is one of the most interesting things I found out about Bergamote Calabria, which isn't sort of present in the other fragrances I mentioned. The way this bergamot is enriched with the cardamom, that kind of gives it this dry, a bit spicy feel. This is why I think it reminded me of Neroli Outre Noir as being a more spicy citrus fragrance from Guerlain. And because it has a musk base, I think the comparison with La Colonne du Parfumeur is very warranted. Albeit, La Colonne du Parfumeur is a lot murkier, more floral, and the musk is more prominent. This is very lightly musky, so I think it's very pleasant and not demanding at all to wear. So all in all, I think this is a very, very beautiful scent. Now, probably when I'll be smelling Bergamote Fantastico, I will be referencing this Bergamote Calabria as well. Who knows? I don't know what that fragrance smells like. But if indeed it is a fragrance dedicated to bergamot, the other fragrance dedicated to bergamot from the house is this Bergamote Calabria. And I think they might reference each other. I do not know. So this is my review of Bergamote Calabria. If you've got any other questions, do let me know. And until next time, remember, fragrance creates memories, and may yours be happy.